The next segment that I want to talk about is actual file formats. And this is just, everybody has their own take on this. And so I just want to tell you my take and what I suggest that you do. I suggest that you shoot RAW. Do not shoot JPEG because RAW is going to give you a lot more information from your highlights down to your shadows. And that's very, very important to understand. Now, once you shoot RAW in whatever post production that you're using, I don't care if it's Lightroom, I don't care if it's Bridge, I don't care if it's Canon or Nikon or what have you, you can then process to a JPEG. And what is a JPEG? A JPEG is a compressed file. A RAW file is, they're very, very large. You can see that this image is 60 megs big, 60.2 megs big. And this is a JPEG, but when it's a JPEG form, it might only be about 3 megs big. And so JPEG compresses the file and then it opens it up and makes it into a much larger file when you open it up. So it's a good way to save storage. However, when I shoot, I don't shoot on JPEG, I shoot RAW, and that's so I can get all the most information and the highest quality on my images, and then I'll process them to either a TIFF format, which is a universal image format, or a JPEG, which is a compressed file. But when you open it up in Photoshop, and if you see right now, I'm going to do Control Shift S or Command Shift S, and it will save it, and you can see that the format is a JPEG right here. But the second that I make a new layer on it, I'm just going to do Control J again, and now when I go to save it, you can see that it automatically Photoshop puts it in a PSD file, which is a Photoshop file. So that's automatically, it will do that for you. And so when you're working with, a lot of times we sell backgrounds or that type of thing, they're going to come to you in a PSD format. And so you need to make your selection around the person here and then drop them into the background. It will be in a Photoshop PSD format. And so that's very important to understand. And if we go back to my softball, I have all these layers here. Well, there's another thing that I have to do. When I get ready to actually send this to the lab and make a print of it, I got to come over here. I got to do Control Shift E, and I flatten the entire image. So now I can save it as a JPEG. My lab, American Color Imaging, prefers their images to be sent to them as high quality JPEGs or number 12 JPEGs. And so I'll send it to them like this, even though I still will save the file as a PSD format in all their different layers. So if I was going to call this, what did I call this? Softball recovered. If I was going to save this, I would say softball slash lab, and I would save it as a JPEG, even though right now it's still in a PSD format. And so that's kind of important to understand. You got to be able to know, what your lab wants. You also need to be calibrated to your lab. Each lab will have its specific instructions and requirements that it wants you to do to save your files, so you're going to be able to get accurate color from what you see on your monitor versus what the paper printout is going to be. So talk to your lab on what color space do they want it, what mode do they want it in, do they want it in JPEGs, do they want TIFF formats, what formats do they want it in. It's important that you communicate with your lab, and it's also important that you calibrate your monitor to the lab, so the colors that you're seeing here will be on the colors that you see in your prints. The densities that you're seeing here will be the same densities that you see in your print. And if you're not calibrated to the lab, you're going to have major problems on your output devices. And that's critical to understand. Even when I do slideshows, I output them, I adjust my images for the slideshows for the projector that I'm using. So I will calibrate to whatever my output device is going to be. And that's critical that you understand that. And it's also critical that you understand the difference between a JPEG file, a RAW file, a PSD format, and a TIFF format. TIFF is kind of the universal imaging format. Photoshop will see a TIFF file. It would also see a PSD file. It will see a lot of different files. And you can just click on here. Here are all the different type of files that you have here. PNGs are for like when we do our clipping mask. And if you ever order our clipping mask, that will come to you in PNG files where you can just drop it in. It's a transparent background. You also have PNG files are for very, very large file sizes when your images start getting too big. You got all these different type of files, BMPs for bitmaps. Just there's so many different ones. So you have to know what your lab is using. You have to know what your camera is doing. You have to know what Lightroom is doing. You have to know what Bridge is doing. So this is very, very important to understand. Now, further on in these videos, Nina is going to be also explaining to you about brushes and how to import brushes and how to use clipping masks and that type of thing. But this is just something that I really want you to know. You really should know this to be able to communicate with your lab and to have great output. And then the last thing I really want to show you is we have this image of my buddy here. His name's Buck. And we've talked about your selection tools and the magic wands and all that. We talked about the pen tool and your vector tools. We talked about masking. About the only thing we haven't really talked about is your cloning tool and your healing brush. And right now I have a healing brush, and if I click on this, you can see that I have spot healing or I have a healing brush. I personally prefer to use the healing brush, which you have to designate a target to it. And you can see here, I'm just going to make my brush slightly bigger, that this gentleman has a couple moles on him. So I'm just going to come over here and I'm just going to take those out. And so I'm holding down the Alt key, which for the Mac is the Option key. So I'm holding that down and I'm just clicking on that, and I'm coming up over here, and what Photoshop is doing is it's seeing the pixels that are all related to wherever I do my target at. There's my target. So if I click on that and then come up to here and hit that, it's going to take all those pixels around that and blend it together. And so I'm just coming up into that, and so you can see that. And so I would just come up here and clean up some of the skin and some of the freckles and maybe some of the moles that he has on him here. And so I got to be careful because now I just cloned over another mole. And so it cloned it right to it. Now the cloning tool is the same thing, but it's going to copy it exactly. It's not going to care about the surrounding pixels. It's only going to look at the actual pixels that are there. And so, if I really wanted to come in here and clean this up, I could really get in there tight and do some nice blending. But now I got to be very, very careful between densities too. And also on the mask tool, you'll see if I come over here to the edges, I'll get this fringing. So in order to avoid that, put your target right on the center of the line, and then you can see the line move, and so you can line up those lines just perfect, and then you can clone up into them. And so that's another thing that you can do as far as doing that. And it's just, just takes a little bit of practice. Another thing you also might want to do is you might also want to try different layer modes. And so I'm going to zoom out of this. These are your layer modes. And you can see now I can go to darken here. I can go to multiply, which will darken the whole image. Don't be afraid to play with different type imaging style or layer modes, because you can do a lot of really cool effects with it. There's screen, and so it really increases the highlight, but just between screen and multiply, I can really play off of that and get some different type of feels to it. And so don't be afraid to do that. Also, don't be afraid to play with the same way with your brush. And I'm going to just click a yellow here real quick. And try your different brushes, that they're different modes. And so you got normal here. I'm going to come down to dissolve, and so I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to hit this, and you'll see that it does more of a speck type spray paint to it. Everybody see that there? So I'm just going to do that. Boom. It gives me a spectral type of spray. I'm going to go down to linear burn, and we're just going to come in here, and it'll just add a color to it. It's not covering up his skin, and that's cool. I didn't know it would do that. So wow, that's cool. I've never tried that. You can also do just all these different little things to try color burn, see what it does. Same thing. Cool. Okay, let's try something else. Let's try overlay, see what it does. Look how much is burning that out. Look at the intensity of the brightness and the contrast there. Really, you could use that. I mean, that could be a neat effect for a proper image type of thing. So just don't be afraid to play. That's my last bit of advice to you. Get in here and play different things. I'm able to do a lot of what I can do with my images because I get in there and I play and I look at something, like this. I can say, wow, I really like that highlight. That would really be cool in this type of situation, especially for like him. Let's say he's an angel type of thing. I could burn out his face and even use the same skin tone as him, but just look at how much more contrast that has. Look at that. depending on the mood, you could really create some cool effects with that. Really, I kind of like that. Wow. Let's do that some more. Let's do the top part here. So I'm just going to bring that in a little bit more. And now let's go up to filter and let's do blur. And I know I'm just playing, but I'm just having fun here. And let's move that to the side so we can see it. And let's blur that a little bit. Cool. Cool. Look at that. And now let's make a mask for it. Now let's just bring some of that back. Let's get out of overlay mode and let's go back to normal. I'm just going to bring some of that back. And now we're going to hit that with about 14%, 15. Let's bring some of that back. Look at that. See, now that's pretty cool. Look at the difference between there. Boom, boom. But it's just a neat effect. Don't be afraid to play whatever you do, people. Have fun with this. You know, it's really just sitting down and enjoying it. So now you know your formats. You know you need to be calibrated. And again, these are just things, what I call Photoshop 101. Things that everyone should know about Photoshop and how to play with it. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, you know, go ahead and email me or Facebook me or even call me if I can help you out at all. And I just want to thank you so much for letting Nina and I be a part of your photography. And so go ahead, think about joining Woody's World. That you'll really learn a lot. It gets much more advanced, and you'll learn techniques and treatments on how exactly that I created this image or what I did in order to get these effects to that particular image. I know you'll really enjoy it. Also, be sure to check out the Photoshop tips every week. And so until next time we meet again, shoot from the heart and shoot with passion. We will see you here at Woody Walters Digital Photo Candy. Bye.